Yes, it goes on. Ministers announce commissions and inquiries, reports everywhere, which will not make the blind bit of difference, because no one has got the guts to talk about the real problem, let alone do something about it. They still have their heads in the sand and their arses pointed skywards. No wonder we all keep getting shafted. All of the points we made, the reasons for our protests, kept being proven right, week after week. No one seems to be learning any lessons though. All of my life I've been a worker, a grafter, though not necessarily in the schoolroom at Puttridge High School, in what passed for a nice part of Luton when we were kids. I always managed to get in the top set without ever really knuckling down, and did enough to win a highly prized apprenticeship at an aeronautical engineering firm with Britannia Airways in Luton, where I was born and bred. My mum and her second husband Tommy Lennon worked really hard so that we could afford to live in that part of the town. They were never given a leg up by the state, and they never asked for one. Me neither, although the state has tried to give me a few things, most of which I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy, while on second thoughts maybe I would, because I have quite a few of them. Enemies, that is, a big fat proportion of the civilised world, and just about the entire uncivilised world and counting. Living there was certainly a big step up from Farley Hill, where I lived as a kid, a sprawling hillside estate to the south of Luton town centre, which used to be the biggest working class community in the district, and a happy enough hunting ground for young kids like us to play out together. Farley Hill is very different today. It changes by the week, by the month, by the year. It's not a happy place for a lot of people who live there. I look at the elderly non-Muslim people being forced out of their homes as one community takes the district over, a street at a time, an estate at a time, and I can't think of a better phrase than ethnic cleansing to describe what's going on there. Sure, you don't see dead bodies on the scale of the global war zones, maybe, although in some truth there have been plenty of casualties. But the outcome is the same, a settled community, even a mixed community, because black and white people have long mixed well in Luton. Slowly but surely they're being forced out by fair means or foul. My older brother was the clever one of the Yaxley family, but I was street smart enough and I could pass an exam. I got my 11 plus GCSEs, including an A in maths, and won that apprenticeship, only 6 available for 600 applicants, which I hope says something. That ended in tears though, as you might have guessed. My day job this first few years hasn't been fixing or building aircraft. It was my own fault, as so many things have been, but even during my 5 years with Britannia, I would spend my Friday nights moonlighting on contracting jobs in London. I always knew the value of a pound, and I always wanted nice things. That's how come me and Afghan mates Cameron, Imran, and a black lad called Andre managed to club together and buy a Porsche when we were still teenagers, real flash geezers. That ended in tears too. I've cut a few corners trying to do well for myself and my family, not enough that I deserve to go to jail for, lending my brother-in-law the deposit for a house and putting him in touch with my mortgage advisor though. I was basically blackmailed into pleading guilty to that in order to keep my wife from being dragged into a courtroom and having her photograph splashed all over the press. That brought my life, the one that I was hoping to build beyond the EDL, to an abrupt and painful halt. Meanwhile, Britain, the world, continues daydreaming in a state of complete denial over the dangers presented by the ideology that has effectively declared war on us. I find it impossible to just sit and watch it happening. From the moment we started the English Defence League and began aggravating the authorities, the British state decided that it would do the same back to us, or specifically to me, as the public face of the EDL. They, the police, Special Branch, MI15, and James Bond too for all I know, descended on me and my family like a ton of bricks. They scrutinised every penny I had ever earned, every bill, invoice, receipt I'd ever issued or collected. They swarmed all over my family. They even got a warrant to go through my mum and dad's bank account. They did it to everyone I had ever done business with, and after years of trying, on that at least they got absolutely nowhere, found nothing wrong. It took them long enough, but they eventually found something they could hang on me, the mortgage case. That's why I ended up with the time to tell this story. It's why I've spent probably too much time tweeting about the evils and dangers of radical Islam. Even that isn't without its dangers. I was convicted of a minor white-collar offence, but I was hit with licence conditions that all related to EDL, with some inexplainable reason. People could tweet death threats to me, say they were going to rape my mum, behead my children, but simply by responding to them, my liberty was physically taken away from me. I was locked back up. And did the police go after these haters, the people making these vile threats? Don't be silly. There's only room for one pantomime villain in this story. Until July 23rd, 2015, I had to keep my nose clean. And if I knew what was best for me, my mouth shut. I had to report regularly to the pain-in-the-arse probation officer in Bedford, who saw her main goal in life as turning me into one of her politically correct puppets, and now have to somehow plan a life beyond the EDL, and most probably beyond Luton. It isn't as if I can go down Bury Park, the town's hotbed of extreme Islam, and fix Mr. Khan's broken boiler, is it? I used to have a plumbing business, among other things, until the state closed me down, froze my bank accounts, declared me a financial non-person. If I'd tried plying my trade down Bury Park tomorrow, it's a toss-up whether they'd find my head in a different part of the town from my body, or whether they'd find either of them at all. Tommy Robinson is very well known in that neck of the woods, by the violent Muslim gangsters and the extreme Muslim preachers. Even the ordinary locals going about their daily business feel justified to take a swing if they see me passing, as has happened more than once, even while working with film crews, but the law doesn't apply to those instances, so I have to be careful where I go, needless to say. An everyday job in Luton isn't on the cards then, yet my family has taken a massive financial hit of $125,000 over the mortgage case under proceeds of crime legislation. I'll go into more detail later, but when I pleaded guilty in that deal with the Crown Prosecution Service, it limited what they could pursue me for financially, along with having my wife out of it. That was the axe that hung over my head. Plead guilty, Tommy, and we'll leave your wife alone. What would you do? What would any man do? My agreement with the CPS was that they wouldn't pursue me for getting what they call particular benefit from the offence. I'd lent my brother-in-law £20,000. He overstated his earnings on his mortgage and made £30,000 when he sold the house on and paid me back, that's all. Then, after I pleaded guilty for what my lawyer thought would be a non-custodial sentence and still got jailed, the police went back on their word anyway, going after me for £315,000, the total value of all the equity in the property my wife and I owned. The lying bastards. I don't know if that's because I told the officers from the Metropolitan Intelligence Bureau people, who claim to be a division of Scotland Yard, to go fuck themselves. Those people promised to make all my problems go away, if only I went back to lead the EDL, to be their man on the inside. What were they after? I'm still not sure. A way of controlling the EDL, perhaps, to suit whatever their own political agendas were? I also think they were worried about the Paul Golding character, who was starting another protest movement, Britain First. He's the man they might have seen in the news, but mostly on social media networks, storming into mosques, taking his followers into the foray, quite a bit more forceful than I ever did at the EDL. Anyway, whoever the MIB really are, they wanted me back on the inside as their informer, running the EDL. They came to see me in prison, at home. They kept phoning me every time I was at a low ebb and thought things couldn't get worse. Along came this crew, dangling an offer to help. I told them where to shove it. I'd rather do the jail time than be an informer.